Hello, I'm Frank Caruso, producer of Oregon Life, and welcome to a brand new episode. We're out here at Green Haven Gardens, and you're about to meet the two people that started this magnificent garden. Where I'm standing, there was nothing here a few years ago, but now it is spectacular. So stay tuned for this episode of Oregon Life.
Hi, I'm Heather Lynch of Green Haven Gardens in Brooklyn, Wisconsin. I have been out at this property, my husband and I, for 3 years now, and we love to grow our own food. We love to eat really delicious, really fresh seasonal food, and you can come along with me as I harvest them. So I am a scientist by trade, and I kind of apply my scientific mindset to gardening quite a lot. So I like to grow a lot of diversity. I like to grow a lot of different varieties of stuff. I like to grow new breeds of plants. I like to grow heirloom breeds of plants, and I kind of just put it all in my garden. And I'm also, the biggest motivator for growing my own food is the food itself. I really love super fresh, super flavorful stuff, and I found that the best way to get the most delicious tasting food is to grow it myself. So that has been the inspiration to coming out and living rurally and expanding our growing space and trying to grow as much as we can year round. Main motivator is definitely delicious things, because I like to be able to come out and just pick whatever I need whenever I need it, and right now in September is a perfect time to do that. We're kind of overloaded with delicious food. This eggplant, if I can get it off. And so through a lot of the summer, it's just coming out, and this is our grocery store. We just eat whatever is out here, whatever is ready. That's what dictates what I'm gonna make for the day. This is a Black Beauty eggplant. It's an heirloom variety. It's your standard sort of large Italian eggplant, and you know it's a good eggplant when it's very firm to the touch and the skin has gone from a matte color to a shiny color. The shinier it is, the fresher it is, and you can see it doesn't have any dimples or anything, so it's just picked, super fresh. And we really like to throw eggplant on the grill. We find that charring it a little bit brings out a lot of its own flavor. We'll put a little bit of olive oil, salt and pepper, put it on the grill, sometimes make like an herby or a yogurt sauce with it. But yeah, eggplant is super delicious. It kind of sucks up all of the flavors that you give it. And it's a really kind of easy to grow plant here. They get to be pretty prolific at this time of the year, where we have a lot of eggplant on the counter at the moment. So maybe I'll make eggplant parmesan instead. That would be good too. Okay, so I'm gonna pick some basil. I'm gonna use basil in a dish that I'm making with some tomatoes right now. And when you're picking basil, you like to kind of just go for these big, nice leaves. But if you actually want the healthiest plant, it's better to actually get down pretty low on the plant and pinch off kind of a whole stem. So I'll pinch off this whole stem, and then right here where I pinched that is gonna branch out into more plant. It's gonna get bushier instead of getting tall and straggly. So when I'm picking basil, I tend to go in and just kind of rip off a whole bunch of stems and trim off a bunch at once, because even if I don't need to use all of this, it's gonna make for a lot healthier plant, and I'm gonna end up with a lot more basil leaves as the season goes on. And I've been picking from this one quite often. We've made a couple batches of pesto. We grow a lot of basil, pick a lot of basil, and then we'll freeze the pesto to be able to eat it all winter long, which, like, fresh tasting, summer tasting pesto in January is pretty spectacular. Peppers have been growing for, I don't even know how many months now. I started them in January. So peppers start really early. They're a really long season vegetable in Wisconsin, and so I really have to get them going as early as possible so then they can ripen. And you can see that some of them are finally starting to ripen for me. So we have some habaneros. I like to make a lot of fermented hot sauces. So I have a whole range of different types of peppers, some really rare peppers. A lot of them have a lot of like fruity flavors to them in addition to the heat. So I like to ferment them and then make them into hot sauces, and they're very delicious. But I start almost all of my plants from seed myself. So I started all of these in January. I started all of the tomatoes about February, March. And I actually hosted a tomato sale at my house this year. And I, I raised up about 1,000 tomato plants and raised them in my husband's antique pickup truck, and I made that into a greenhouse because I don't have a greenhouse out here, but I needed a place to be able to raise up a lot of plants, and I noticed a very flat surface that was sitting in my garage, not going anywhere, so I put plastic over that and made that into a mobile greenhouse. Raised up about 1,000 tomato plants, sold a whole bunch of them at a tomato sale, which will now be an annual thing for me. I hope to always host a rare and heirloom tomato sale out here. And it actually funded the rest of my seed purchases, and I think I used a lot of it to pay for the 80 trees that we put in the yard this year. And yeah, it was a very fun thing. I love starting seeds. It's a very good thing to do as a gardener in the winter when you really want to be outside growing things. Instead, I can be inside kind of dreaming of what the rest of the summer in the garden will look like.
Hi, my name is Dylan Lynch. I am Heather Lynch's husband. So we got this truck last year, and it was just something fun. I like old classic looking things. It's a beautiful truck, but also super simple, so really easy to work on and fix, which saves money for me. But we realized that it made a great transport for Heather's vegetables when she was starting them from seed. And what she would do to get the plants more hardy is the truck would be parked in the garage. It had grow lights over top of it, and we'd lift the grow lights up and then pull the truck outside so it could get some sun outside and also get a little bit more hardy to the elements. And then we'd pull it back in at night. We live out in Brooklyn, Wisconsin. We moved here a few years back in 2019. At that time, this area right here was probably a couple of trees and a lot of grass. And since then, we've managed to knock all that down, build all of these garden beds. It started with that, and then it was straw bales and trellises, and then it was expanding the fence and stretching it out a little bit bigger, and sunflowers and more flowers, and now here we are. When we first moved to our property in Madison, we had just a couple of raised beds. This first bed over here was actually redwood that we inherited from my father-in-law, so which is supposed to last forever, and it has. And then from there, we kind of moved on to just your regular 2x4 construction lumber, untreated, because we don't want it to be treated for growing vegetables. And we did try cedar, but cedar didn't hold up as well as we had hoped it would. And so we tried another method, which is why our wood looks a little bit darker. We tried to burn the outside of them, which is also supposed to help protect the wood and last longer, but it's just kind of worn off, and they're doing great. None of the beds are rotting out yet. They all still look just as good. We also do our own composting out here, so basically everything, like the yard, when I mow it, so I'll let it get a little bit long sometimes, and then we bag it. And as long as there's no dog waste, I make sure there's none of that. That all will go into our compost bin, as well as at the end of the gardening season, we'll start taking down all of our plants, and whatever's left over, that goes into our compost, as well as food scraps. No oils, no meats, because you want to keep animals away. It does get a little bit stinky, but really not too bad. Nothing that we can smell anywhere near the house, or even as close as the garden. And it's really easy. It's just, I mean, there's ratios, and you can get pretty intense about your compost, but All you really have to do is get it all mixed together really well and make sure you get it wetted down, and then just turn it every once in a while so that it cooks. Probably one of my favorite things that Heather loves to grow is one of her cherry tomatoes, which is the sun gold. And she actually, when we were in Madison, she used to grow it right next to my grill, because I would just sit there, and while I was grilling, I'd be popping sun golds like they're candy, because they pretty much are very sweet, really delicious.
Okay, so I like to grow a lot of flowers in the garden also. Not only do I think they look beautiful and I like to have my vegetable garden look beautiful, but they do serve a very significant purpose in that they bring pollinators into the garden next to the plants that I would like them to pollinate. And so interplanting annual flowers is always a good idea. I plant a lot of marigolds, but I also grow a lot of edible flowers. And so flowers like nasturtium, they are great for pollinators, but they're also really delicious. They actually taste peppery. So we put them in salads, we put them on top of whatever dishes we're gonna be eating. I like to put them in cocktails just because they're pretty. Another one are these gem marigolds. So traditional larger marigolds are very bitter. These actually taste a little bit citrusy. And so we use them for the same sort of thing, and they're very delicious and they're very pretty, and they also feed the bees, which is good. Even just this morning, I was sitting out here with my coffee and just watching, I saw a monarch, a hummingbird, and a whole ton of bees all at once, just covering some of the flowers that we have out here. So the flip side to having pollinators in the garden is that they will pollinate all of my vegetable plants, which is great because that means I get lots of food from them. But if I want to save the seed from some of my rare and heirloom varieties, I have to make sure that the bees don't get to those flowers. So I put these little bags on the blossoms, before they really open up, and then I can make sure that the bees don't get into those flowers to cross-pollinate them. And then I know that whatever fruit develops underneath that bag will be a pure seed, and I can save it and be confident that it is 100% a clone of the plant that I was growing. So this area right here is our herb garden, and this was something that I really wanted. This is our forever home. We never planned to move, and I wanted a dedicated space to grow perennial herbs, annual herbs, and have it be really accessible for our cooking. So our kitchen is right through here, so we pop out and pick herbs all the time. We finish almost every meal with some fresh herbs, whether it's chives or parsley, cilantro, dill, and we just grow as many of them as we can. So I can show you some of them. All along here, we actually have a hedge of chives that ends up being all of these purple flowers in the spring, and it ends up looking pretty cool. But there's lots of sage and oregano and thyme and strawberries, and at this point in the year it's kind of all overgrown and very prolific, but it is one of my favorite parts of the yard because we just use fresh herbs all the time, and they're very expensive to get from the grocery store. And instead of buying one little pack that's packaged in plastic for $5, I can come out and I can grab an entire handful of sage and do whatever I want with it. Thanks for watching this episode of Oregon Life.